In October 1982, the Calloway family vanished without a trace from their cabin deep in the Idaho woods. No struggle, no goodbye, just an empty silence where life had once moved with quiet rhythm. What started as a weekend escape turned into one of Idaho's most haunting disappearances. How could a peaceful, ordinary family vanish so completely, leaving behind no sign of what happened? The Callaways were not the type to draw attention. They were the kind of people whose absence felt impossible. Harold Calloway, 38, worked as a mechanical engineer at the Clearwater hydroelectric plant. He was precise in everything, a man who polished his work boots and labeled every drawer in his toolbox. His colleagues said his routine was so fixed you could set a clock by it. His wife, Margaret, 34, taught second grade at Elkford Elementary. She kept her classroom calm, her handwriting perfect, her patience endless even when tested. They had 2 children, Samuel, 10, a quiet boy who loved to draw, and Lucy, 6, a cheerful child always carrying her stuffed bear named Patch. They lived in a white 2-story house at the edge of Elkford, close enough to smell the pine trees, yet far enough to feel alone. On the morning of Friday, October 15th, the family packed their blue Ford F-150 pickup truck, hitched a small utility trailer, and waved to their neighbor, Mrs. Fletcher. "Just a weekend at the cabin," Margaret said with a smile. Back Sunday night, they had taken that trip many times before. Pinehurst Lake was their peaceful spot, a mirror-like lake surrounded by old logging roads and thick forest. The cabin there had belonged to Harold's father, now gone, and had been in the family nearly 30 years. It was a small wooden cabin with 2 bedrooms, a brick chimney, and a view of the lake that shimmered silver under the autumn light. They left Elkford around 9:30 in the morning. That was the last time anyone saw them alive. By Monday, silence began to spread. Margaret never arrived at the school. Her students waited quietly until the principal sent them home. At the power plant, Harold missed his shift for the first time in a decade. His supervisor called his home but got no answer. By Tuesday, both sets of parents had called the house repeatedly. Still no response. Deputies from Clearwater County made the 2-hour drive toward Pinehurst Lake. The narrow mountain roads twisted through the forest where the radio faded to static. When they reached the Calloway cabin, the front door was locked. Inside, the air smelled faintly of pine smoke and old coffee. Everything was neat. The beds were made, plates rinsed and drying in the rack, Margaret's sweater hanging neatly on the hook. But the family was gone. So was their truck. No sign of struggle, no overturned chairs, no blood, no chaos. It was as if the 4 of them had stepped outside for a moment and simply never returned. The sheriff's report described it as a non-violent disappearance, possibly accidental. Search teams spread out through the forest. Helicopters scanned the winding mountain roads. Divers swept the lake. Rangers on horseback searched every trail. Not a single trace appeared. One deputy, Collins, later recalled something small that he had almost ignored. When he entered the cabin for the first time, he heard something faint and steady, a rhythmic sound like water dripping inside the fireplace. When he looked, there was no leak. The roof above was solid, the fireplace cold, yet the sound continued, drops landing softly in the ash. He wrote it down, then forgot about it. By the end of October, the official search was scaled back. The Callaways' relatives put up missing posters in nearby towns, but most were gone within weeks. The news stations ran the story for 3 nights under the headline, "Family of 4 Vanishes in Idaho Woods." Then the world moved on. Back in Elkford, their house sat dark. The porch light, still on a timer, turned on every night at 7, glowing across the empty lawn. For months it stayed that way. Investigators found nothing strange in their backgrounds. No deaths, no criminal record, no conflict, no reason to disappear. Yet there were details that did not fit. Margaret's sister told police that Margaret had seemed uneasy the week before the trip. She mentioned Harold was not sleeping well. She said he kept waking up and pacing the hallway at night. He had told her he heard noises outside, like footsteps on the porch. When officers checked the house, they noticed the back door latch had been replaced with a new bolt from the inside. The receipt was dated just 3 days before they left. Another note buried in the case file showed that on October 3rd, 12 days before the disappearance, Harold had called the Clearwater Sheriff's Office. He reported trespassers near the cabin. He said he found boot prints in the mud and a metal coffee cup on the porch. Deputies drove out the next morning, but the place was empty. The file was closed, then forgotten. With no leads, theories began to grow. Some said their truck might have slid off a mountain road and lay buried under a landslide or fallen timber. Others whispered that Harold had grown tired of small-town life, that he had planned it all and taken his family north across the border. But no one who knew him believed that. Harold was steady. He finished what he started. He never left things undone. Margaret's co-workers said she would never vanish without her lesson plans or the report card she left neatly stacked on her desk. None of it made sense. There was one more thing that haunted Sheriff Dawson until the day he retired. During the search of the Calloway house, every room was neat except one drawer in Harold's study. Inside were old photographs, most from his childhood. One photo showed two boys standing in front of the Pinterest cabin sometime in the 1960s. Harold looked about 12. The older boy stood just behind him. On the back, written faintly in pencil, were the words, "Ray and me, summer 1961. Raymond Calloway, Harold's older brother, a name no one had mentioned in years. No one seemed to know where Raymond had gone or why the family never spoke of him. By December 1982, the case went cold. No family, no truck, no ransom note, no sign of foul play. Just a locked cabin, a missing pickup, and a silence that deepened with each winter. 10 years passed. The Calloways became a forgotten entry in a dusty cabinet at the Clearwater County Sheriff's Office. The officers who once searched those woods had retired or died. The cabin at Pinterest Lake had collapsed into itself, buried in weeds and snow. In August 1992, a faint echo of the case returned. In a dim, airless evidence warehouse in Clearwater County, Officer Donna Reyes spent another quiet morning sorting boxes marked for disposal. She was 27, on light duty after a knee injury, assigned to archive reduction, a dull task that mostly meant throwing away things no one cared about. By mid-morning, she had stacked several boxes when she noticed one shoved behind an old filing cabinet. The tape was brittle, the cardboard soft from moisture. Written across the front in faded black marker were 4 words. Calloway Cabin OCT 82. She almost ignored it. Then curiosity won. Inside were 3 evidence bags. The first held a few children's items, a tiny wooden truck, a crayon box, and a broken doll's arm. The second contained a notebook half burned along one edge, its pages fused and blackened. The third bag was wrapped in brown paper and held a Kodak disposable camera, the kind you'd buy at a gas station. There was no log sheet, no officer's signature, no record in the system. Officially, the box did not exist. Reyes stared at it for a long moment, remembering the story she had grown up hearing, the one people in Clearwater whispered about when the wind moved through the trees. The Calloway family vanished without a trace in October 1982, and their story lingered in every corner of Idaho. It became the kind of mystery that outlived those who first tried to solve it. When Officer Donna Reyes found the forgotten evidence box, she carried it to her desk, brushed off the dust, and unwrapped the old disposable camera from its paper cover. The plastic was fragile, almost brittle, and a strip of masking tape clung to the back with a handwritten note that read, "Cabin Final Roll." The film counter showed 3 exposures left. She hesitated. Developing it would mean reopening a closed case, something beyond her authority. Yet curiosity pressed harder than caution. That afternoon, she drove across town to Harper's Photo Lab, the only place left in Clearwater County still developing old 35mm film. The man behind the counter, gray-haired and slow, didn't even glance twice when she handed him the camera. She signed the slip, nodded, and walked out. 3 days later, she returned. The clerk handed her a yellow envelope marked 12 exposures processed successfully. Reyes opened it right there in the parking lot. The first few photos were soft and simple, full of quiet life. Harold stood behind a grill, smoke curling around his faint smile. Margaret brushed Lucy's hair by the cabin window. Samuel held up a fish on the dock, beaming. Each shot felt frozen in time, fragile and warm. But then, halfway through the stack, something shifted. The light dimmed, the framing turned uneven, as if the photographer no longer cared about holding the camera straight. The 6th photo showed the cabin interior at night. Curtains drawn, a lamp burning beside the cold fireplace. No people, only stillness. Then came the final image. It was darker, grainier, almost swallowed by shadow. The flash glare revealed a table's edge and a corner of the wall. Near the center stood a man, Harold Calloway. His face was half lit, his eyes open but distant, his expression vacant. He wasn't looking at the camera, but toward something beyond it, as if he heard something moving just out of frame. His shoulders slumped, arms hanging loose, and in one hand, a small metallic object caught the light. A cylinder, maybe a flashlight, or maybe another camera. Along the bottom of the image, a timestamp burned faintly into the border. 3:11 a.m. Her stomach tightened. None of the earlier photos had timestamps, only this one. And according to the records, the family was last seen alive on October 15, 1982. Reyes looked closer. Behind Harold, the fireplace was dark, the shadows leaning toward him as though the light itself recoiled. For a long time, she just stood there beside her car, the envelope trembling in her hand. It wasn't only what she saw, it was what she felt. The image seemed alive, waiting for movement. Back at the precinct, Reyes slipped the photos into new evidence sleeves, labeled them carefully, sealed the box again, and wrote a short note. She placed it on Detective Grant Mercer's desk. He looked up, puzzled. "What's this?" he asked. "Something old," she said, "but maybe not finished." That night, under buzzing fluorescent lights, Mercer sat alone, flipping through the prints. The smiling faces, the happy cabin, the last dark image of Harold standing still at 3:11 a.m. A cold feeling crept through him. 10 years of silence had just ended. The Calloway file was officially reopened. Detective Grant Mercer had worked dozens of cold cases, but this one felt personal. He grew up in Clearwater County. He remembered the posters taped to store windows, the whispers about Pinarest Lake. He had even known one of Margaret's former students. For him, this wasn't just history. It was something unfinished that had waited a decade for the right hands to find it. When Officer Reyes dropped that envelope on his desk, he hadn't expected much. Most old evidence turned to nothing, but as he looked through the photographs, he felt the familiar pull no detective welcomes, the sense that something had been left unsaid, and then came the last image again. Harold in the dark at 3:11 a.m., blank-eyed, half-lit, listening. That timestamp changed everything. It meant someone was awake deep into the night, hours after anyone should have been. The night they disappeared. By procedure, Mercer logged the discovery, reopened the case under active reevaluation, missing persons, Calloway family, and requested all archived files. Within a day, the original reports landed on his desk in a thick folder, brittle and stained with time. The pages were full of maps, search grids, interviews, and weather records. But one small item stood out. A half-burned notebook found in the cabin fireplace 10 years earlier, flattened between inventory sheets. The edges were charred, pages fused into thin lace, but a few lines had survived. The handwriting was neat and looping, unmistakably Margaret's. He walked again last night. "Don't wake the kids. The lake sounds closer every night." The words stopped him cold. Dated one day before the disappearance. Simple sentences, but heavy with quiet fear. He walked again. Not "I heard someone," not "there's a noise outside." The phrasing carried routine, like it had happened before. Mercer read the words 3 times, his eyes tracing the burned margin, wondering what had been lost to the fire. He grabbed his keys. 2 hours later, he was driving toward Pinarest Lake. The road was narrow, half overgrown, cutting through dense pine. The sun sank behind the ridge as he arrived. The forest seemed to press inward, swallowing the single dirt path to the cabin. Branches scraped the windshield. Grass grew between the tire ruts. When he finally saw the cabin, it looked smaller than the photos. Sagging, sunken, half-buried in moss. The roof bowed, the windows gray with dust, the chimney cracked but still standing. He stepped inside slowly, breathing through the rot and cedar. His flashlight beam swept the room, catching broken furniture, a rusted stove, curtains turned to strips. The air was cold, unnaturally cold for August. He tried to picture it alive. The children asleep, Margaret writing, Harold pacing. Somewhere between those quiet hours and dawn, they had vanished. Mercer moved to the fireplace where the notebook had once been found. The bricks were dark with soot. He brushed aside the ash with his hand and noticed something small, something out of line. A section of floorboards near the hearth didn't sit flush. He tapped with his flashlight. The sound changed. Hollow. He crouched lower and pried the edge. The board lifted with a slow creak. Beneath it lay a small trapdoor, roughly 2 feet wide, held with old nails. It hadn't been mentioned in any report. He worked the latch until it gave way. The door lifted, releasing a breath of dry, stale air. Mercer pointed his light inside. A crawl space ran below, shallow but long, maybe 3 feet deep. The dirt was compacted and untouched for years. In one corner sat a small stack of boxes, edges chewed by time. He climbed down carefully, boots pressing into the dust. The first box held nothing but shredded paper. The second, a few old tools and a broken flashlight. The third, smaller and sturdier, had something written across the top in faded black marker. Lucy's things. Mercer froze for a moment. Then he lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in a pink blanket faded with age, were small objects that made the air feel heavy. A porcelain doll missing one eye, a child's mitten, a bundle of crayons melted together by heat, and beneath them a small notebook. Not Margaret's handwriting this time, a child's. He opened it carefully. The first page was full of uneven sketches, simple lines and figures, stick drawings of trees, a lake, and a house. The next showed 4 people standing in front of the cabin. The last one, drawn in darker crayon, showed only 3. The pages were stiff but still whole. Crayon drawings filled each sheet, stick figures with bright colors and uneven smiles. A family of 4 standing in front of a cabin under a yellow sun. Mercer turned the next page. Same figures, same cabin, but a different day. The sky was gray, the trees bare. He turned again. The same 4 figures, but the father now colored red. The crayon pressed so hard the paper tore. On the last drawing, the smallest figure, Lucy, had crossed out her father completely. Thick red lines over and over until the page nearly split. Mercer sat in the crawl space, the flashlight shaking slightly in his hand. Silence surrounded him except for his own breathing. He stared at that last page, thinking about what a 6-year-old could have understood or imagined in those final days. He carefully replaced everything, sealing the box, then climbed out. Before shutting the trap door, he shone the light once more beneath the floorboards. A single shoe print marked the dry earth, too large for a child, half pressed into the dirt, like someone had knelt there years ago. He photographed it, recorded the coordinates, and stood up. The cabin groaned in the wind as if remembering. The more Mercer learned about the Callaways, the less it made sense. The photographs, the burned notebook, the trap door, all felt like pieces of a puzzle that would not fit. Harold's blank stare at 3:11 a.m. still haunted him, but now he had a clue, something tangible. Someone else had been inside that cabin. He just did not know who. A week later, he drove the same mountain road to meet Earl Haskins. Earl was a retired forest ranger, 72, with hands rough as leather and a voice cracked from decades in cold mornings. He had worked the Pinehurst district from the late 70s through the mid-80s and knew every ridge and deer trail within 50 miles. When Mercer mentioned the Callaways, Earl went silent for a long moment, then said, "I think I found something back then." I didn't think it mattered. In the dim light of Earl's cabin, the old man shuffled to a wooden trunk and pulled out a tin coffee can. Wrapped in a handkerchief lay a Kodak camera. Sun-faded yellow, dust packed into its corners. "Picked it up near Pinehurst Trail, summer of '83, Earl said. It was lying in the mud, half a mile from the lake. Film still inside. I figured it belonged to a hiker. Mercer's pulse jumped. He handled the camera carefully, gloves steady. The batch numbers matched cameras sold in 1982. This could easily have been the Callaways. "Why didn't you turn it in?" Mercer asked. Earl shrugged. "Sheriff's boys said the case was cold. Nothing worth stirring, so I tossed it in a box and forgot. I haven't slept great thinking on it." Back in Clearwater, Mercer delivered the camera to the forensic lab. They promised to handle it gently. The film was brittle, the emulsion thin from years of heat and cold. 3 days later, Mercer received a call. "You might want to see this yourself." He arrived at the lab. A young technician, Kendra, had laid 7 photographs on a light table. The colors had aged to amber, but details were clear. Photo 1, a stand of tall pine trees still and bathed in morning fog. Photo 2, the lake, silver and glass flat, no ripples, no people. Photo 3, the dock edge, a fishing line coiled on the planks. Photo 4, the sky, clouds stretched pink over the ridge, the kind of shot someone takes while waiting for dinner. Then the tone changed. Photo 5, the cabin door open a few inches, warm light spilling inside. The image was crooked, like it had been taken in a hurry. A shoulder peaked just inside the frame, blurry, a hint of plaid. Photo 6, the porch front steps. The focus was soft, but in the lower corner, illuminated by the flash, stood a heavy mud-stained boot facing the camera. Photo 7, taken from inside looking out through the window. The flash reflected off the glass. Beyond the glare in the darkness was a shape, tall and motionless, standing just beyond the light. A man, the outline sharp against the trees. The timestamp at the bottom read 4:02 a.m. Mercer studied them one by one. The first four felt calm. The last three were suffocating. The sequence mirrored the Callaway weekend itself, starting normal and ending in silence. He looked again at the sixth photo, the boot. "Can we estimate the size?" he asked. Kendra nodded. "Roughly 11 inches, men's size 11, maybe 11 and a half. Not small." Mercer checked Harold's personnel file. Shoe size 9. The weight of that difference pressed on him. If Harold wasn't wearing those boots, someone else was. He walked the photos to the evidence lab for a full analysis. Contrast, light balance, reflection study. After an hour, the technician pointed to a faint reflection in the window of the final image. "See this? Looks like the flash caught something metallic inside. Could be another camera." Mercer nodded. 2 cameras. 2 sets of eyes. One looking in, one looking out. He added it to his notes. Recovered secondary film, consistent with 1982 Kodak. Final exposure 4:02 a.m. Adult male figure outside cabin. Boot size estimated men's 11. Harold Callaway confirmed size 9. Implication, secondary person present. Mercer wrote another line. If Harold was not the photographer who was outside and who stayed awake inside at 4 a.m. that night. He pinned the new photos beside the earlier ones on his office corkboard. Left, Harold and family smiling by the lake. Center, burned journal fragment, Margaret's neat handwriting. He walked again last night. Right, the new sequence. Images darkening until the last, the shadow beyond the glass. Together they told a story almost human, but not sane. Someone awake when everyone else slept, watching through windows, listening to something only they could hear. Mercer leaned back. Office clock clicked past midnight. Outside rain began to fall, soft and steady like footsteps. He stayed still and listened. The evidence did not lie. 2 cameras, 2 photographers. At least one man moving through the cabin hours after the Callaways vanished. 10 years later, those same eyes stared from a strip of faded film. Weeks into the reopened case, Mercer found the missing name, Raymond Callaway, Harold's older brother, Army technician, discharged in 1978 after insomnia and night hallucinations. After that, nothing. No address, no records, no trace. Only a single photo survived. 2 boys in front of the Pinehurst cabin, younger smiling, elder looking away. On the back, Ray and Harold, summer 1961. The same cabin that would swallow the Callaways 20 years later. Tracing old records, Mercer saw Raymond's last postings were in Idaho. He would have known every logging trail, every service road near Pinehurst. Ranger logs from 1979 to 1981 mentioned a mute drifter camping in the area, stealing food, vanishing before dawn. No one had ever linked the name. Mercer could feel the connection forming, though it remained fragile. Every clue now hinted at someone who had been there, watching, waiting, following the family, and maybe knowing far more than anyone ever imagined. Every detail pointed to one truth. The Callaways were never truly alone at Pinehurst Lake. The drawings, the journals, the hidden trap door, the footprints, the 2 cameras, the night photographs, and the Lost Brothers connection all spun together into a pattern too precise to be random. Whoever Raymond had been, he had a presence, a silent force that shadowed the family. Mercer's mind raced with questions. Why did Harold's brother vanish from records? What did he do in those years between his discharge and the family disappearance? The drifter reports lined up with his knowledge of the land. He had to know the lake, the paths, the trails, the hidden nooks and crannies. He had to know the cabin intimately. Could he have been following the family, observing them, or even interacting with them without leaving a clear trace? Every hypothesis seemed darker than the last. Mercer spread the photographs across his desk, studying each detail again. Every shadow, every boot, every reflection in glass mattered. He could not ignore the crayon drawings from Lucy, the red father, the crossing out, the imagery of fear and tension. The patterns repeated in adult observations, hidden cameras and secret movements. The Callaways' ordinary weekend had intersected with something long, silent, and sinister. Time and age had not erased the presence of this other figure. 10 years later, it returned through a small camera, fragile film, and a forgotten note. The house itself had retained memory, as if the walls held secrets that were waiting to be seen. Mercer felt the weight of the investigation pressing deeper. Each clue pulled him further into the past, toward the unknown. The colors in the photographs, the boots, the reflections, all hinted at human presence, deliberate and watchful. The missing brother, the old drifter reports, the cabin, the lake, they were pieces of the same puzzle. And the puzzle was far from complete. He knew he would return to Pinterest, tracing every step, every path, every shadow left behind. The forest would not give up its secrets easily. Mercer realized that the weekend the Callaways vanished had been watched, documented, and perhaps manipulated by someone who understood them, the cabin, and the land far better than anyone expected. By the time the storm outside had faded, Mercer had organized the evidence, pinned the photographs, and made detailed notes. Every boot print, every shadow, every reflection was documented, tied to possible suspects. Raymond Callaway loomed larger in his mind, the missing piece connecting the drifter reports, the cabin surveillance, and the cryptic final drawings. He had to understand what drove a man to watch his own family disappear decades later, and why all signs had remained hidden until now. Each hour he spent examining the material deepened the mystery. The lake, the cabin, the trails, the forest, everything that seemed calm and ordinary now held a dark and hidden rhythm, one that Mercer was determined to uncover. In a 1982 interview file, a shopkeeper described a man who looked like Harold buying rope, canned food, and coffee. He never spoke. Deputies marked it unrelated. Mercer didn't. The pattern grew clearer. 2 weeks before vanishing, Harold had called police about footsteps outside the cabin. Dismissed as wildlife, Margaret's burned journal echoed the same rhythm. He walked again last night. Don't wake the kids. The repetition wasn't fear of an animal. It was recognition. Raymond's discharge notes read, "No roaming auditory hallucinations. Believes he must walk to keep walls still." The words matched hers exactly. He pictured that last night. Harold awake, hearing footsteps he already knew, the brother who never learned to sleep, returning from the dark. Maybe he opened the door, maybe he shouldn't have. The missing piece had a name now, and it fit every space in the story. The figure in the window, the boot by the porch, the man awake at 3 a.m. None of them were strangers. Whatever haunted the Callaway cabin hadn't come from the woods, it had come home. In May 1993, a forestry survey team mapping runoff zones near Pinterest stumbled on metal beneath a slope of packed soil and roots. At first, they thought it was debris from an old logging vehicle. When they cleared the surface, a blue fragment of paint appeared, the same color listed in the 1982 report for the Callaway family's Ford F-150. The truck was half buried, nose down in the dirt, its frame twisted by years of frost and thaw. 5 kilometers from the cabin, it had gone unseen for a decade. Inside were 3 bodies, Margaret Callaway in the passenger seat, Samuel and Lucy belted in the back. All 3 skeletal, the remains fragile but positioned upright as if they had been sitting quietly when the vehicle went over the edge. The ignition was off, the brake unengaged. There were no fractures suggesting impact trauma from a fall. The slide had been slow, deliberate. The driver's seat was pulled too far back for Harold to have reached the pedals. On the steering wheel, a separate set of fingerprints was preserved in a film of resin, later confirmed through lab analysis as belonging to Raymond Callaway. The discovery cracked open what 10 years of searching could not. Harold was still missing, but the others had been found, and the evidence said the man who had driven that truck wasn't him. Mercer stood at the excavation site as the vehicle was hoisted from the dirt, the lake wind moving through the trees. Beneath the rust, he could still make out the faint curve of a bumper sticker. Clearwater Hydroelectric Employee Family Picnic, 81. A small, ordinary piece of life now unearthed with the dead. He imagined the moment before the descent. Engine idling, the children asleep, Margaret beside the window and Raymond in the driver's seat, silent. The distance between the brothers had ended here on this slope. A year later, another file crossed his desk. An unidentified male found in 1984 deep within Pinterest Forest had never been matched to any missing person. When the remains were retested under the new DNA registry, the result closed the circle. Raymond Callaway. The body had been lying less than 2 miles from the ridge, weathered and partially buried beneath pine needles. His jacket was military issue, torn at the sleeve. In the pocket were two items, a set of keys marked Ford and a faded Polaroid photograph. The image showed Harold Calloway seated in the cabin's main room, eyes closed, hands resting on his knees as if asleep or posed. No timestamp, no handwriting, just that stillness again. The same silence that ran through every piece of the case. The final report arrived in autumn of 1994, a thick folder bound in gray twine. After 11 years, dozens of dead ends, and one grave reopened. The Calloway case closed with 20 lines of text. The conclusion read, homicide-suicide sequence initiated by Raymond Calloway. Harold Calloway presumed deceased prior to vehicle incident. Beneath it, Mercer's initials appeared in careful ink, a small signature beneath the ruin of two families. The evidence formed a grim but coherent pattern. Raymond had been living in the Pinehurst woods for months before the disappearance, surviving in shacks and runoff tunnels, scavenging food from nearby cabins. His military discharge and records of hallucinations suggested a slow unraveling, a man untethered from the world, orbiting the only place that still felt familiar. Harold had known. The half-burned journal, the late-night phone call, the silence in Margaret's entries, all hinted that he had tried to protect them without revealing the truth. Perhaps he believed his brother would stay hidden, or perhaps he thought leaving would spare them all. On the night of October 17, 1982, that fragile plan collapsed. The presence near the cabin, the second camera, and the evidence of a brief struggle told the story that words never could. Raymond returned, maybe seeking warmth, forgiveness, or a home he no longer recognized. Harold confronted him. There was shouting, a blow, something sharp or sudden that ended it before dawn. When Margaret woke, her husband was gone, and the man outside wasn't a stranger. In panic or madness, Raymond took control. He gathered the family, told them they were leaving, and drove into the dark. The descent down the slope wasn't fast. It was quiet, deliberate. The brake was never touched. Raymond lived for months afterward. Tracks found miles from the crash site, remnants of campfires circling back toward the ridge. He wandered through the snow-blind woods carrying the photograph and a rusted keyring, one man drifting between guilt and survival. When the winter turned, temperatures dropped below -20. He was found that January beneath a pine at the forest's edge, seated upright, frost in his beard, eyes half open. In one gloved hand, he held the photo of Harold and Lucy, the same image missing from the family album. There were no signs of violence, only a posture that suggested waiting. The coroner wrote that exposure was the cause of death. Mercer never believed it was that simple. In his notes, he added a final line not meant for the record. He thought he escaped justice, but the forest never forgot his footsteps. The pines had buried what law could not. 2 years later, lightning struck the old Calloway cabin during a summer storm. Fire consumed it within minutes. The structure, already brittle from decades of weather, collapsed before firefighters reached the ridge. By morning, only the stone foundation remained, a rectangle of ash and silence. When the county rebuilt the trail markers the following spring, they set a small bronze plaque near the lake's edge. The Calloways, lost to the pines, 1982. Visitors still left wildflowers beside it. Most didn't know the story. They only knew a family had once lived here and never came home. Detective Mercer retired that same year. In his office drawer, he kept a single photograph from the case. The image recovered by Officer Reyes in 1992, Harold standing in the cabin at 3:11 a.m., his face lit by the camera's flash, his gaze fixed beyond the frame. For years, Mercer had believed Harold was looking toward the window, watching something move in the dark outside. But now, after everything, he saw it differently. The expression wasn't fear, it was recognition. Harold hadn't been looking into the night. He'd been looking at the figure stepping toward him, a shape born from his own shadow. In the end, both brothers stayed where they had always belonged, in the silence of the forest, one beneath the earth, the other inside a photograph that never stopped listening.